So we're continuing on with this really wonderful book. These lessons are lessons that are meant to be practiced. That's why I suggest for those of you who like these shiurim and these words of Rabbi Mimran, buy the book. Because you could read it like I have been through here a number of times. And I go through things like everybody else, real, what I say, dangerous situations, things that cause a lot of pain. It is possible to be able to perceive that in a way. But it's not easy. And so therefore he's coming to teach us. He writes, in the Kabbalistic literature, rising to the higher spiritual realms is known as climbing or ascending the tree of life. This is alluded to when the Torah speaks of the cherubs, in the Hebrew cheruvim, who guard the path of the tree of life. So he says over there, the word siach pertains to a tree. Siach is a sprout in its spiritual sense, where it is used as a meditative device to commune with the transcendental. In other words, the concept of the siach, again, is like an interface. That being able to get into that is to get into the rest of the tree. This tree is often said to refer to the entire array of the Sefiros. In other words, going for the lower Sefira, which is the Sefirot of Malchus, upwards. And as we have seen, ascending through this array plays a key role in prophetic meditation. The relationship between the concept of a tree and the mental process is to some extent indicated by the fact that the Hebrew word for tree, which is eitz, is closely related to the root ya'etz, which means to advise. Now let's go back again and let's read this again. He says, now we have a metaphor. A metaphor is a mental image of comparison, of things being related to each other, the relationship between the concept of a tree now, and then the mental process, which is to try to reach that tree, is to some extent indicated by the fact that the Hebrew word for tree is eitz, which is closely related, he says, to the Hebrew word ya'etz. And here's a couple of Hebrew letters that you could really look at how they're formed. Look at all the different parts. So ya'etz means to advise. Gain knowledge. The relationship between, let me see if I got the right place. Yeah, the relationship between siach, that word siach, it's a sprout, but now he says it's a tree. It's like an attachment to the root. Used in relationship to communion with the spiritual, and its meaning as a tree is clearly expressed in the Midrash. When Hagar and Ishmael were driven away by Sarah, the Bible states that Hagar cast the child under one of the trees, which over there the word siach is used. Very interesting. The Midrash states that the tree is called siach because it was here, or there, that an angel communed, that is, through the siach, with Hagar. Angel here means is this array of tremendous consciousness. The consciousness that God is within inside of all things. That's the communion that took place, and God is ultimately only good. So in other words, there's a phrase called Ma da'ava Rahmana Tavava. No matter what you're into in your life, and the trials, the tribulations that you have, God's inside of there, and he's doing it for good. But very difficult to see that when you're in a trial. So here it is Hagar, and suddenly her mind opens, and she's able to see. It is significant to note that this took place in a place called Ber Lachai Roi. I mean, these are all really tremendous words. Siach at the Ber Lachai Roi, which means the well spring of the God that I could see, of the life force that I could see. The same place where Isaac meditated. This is in Yitzchak Avinu. He meditated at the same place of the Ber Lachai Roi. This is because what they're looking for is connection. And where the term siach, he misspelled a little bit here, is first used. This can be understood when we realize that this is used only with regards to Yitzchak Avinu, one of the patriarchs. Who are the patriarchs? He says individuals who reach the various highest spiritual levels that mankind can reach. Thus, while others may strive to gaze at the chariot, which is called the Merkava, which is in the vision of Ezekiel or Yechezkel, the Midrash states that 10 Sefirot of Nothingness, their gazing is like a vision of a lightning flash. Their end has no limit, and they speak of them running and returning. Now, this is the vision, I really think it comes from the view of the prophet Yechezkel, Ezekiel. Commentaries explain that when one gazes at the Sefirot, he can only do so for the patriots themselves or the chariot. Now, what he means by the patriots, it means our fathers. We are genetically, spiritually related to our fathers who are, let's say, between 3,500 years ago and 4,000 years ago, somewhere in that frame of reference. They're still inside of us. And we could connect to their midos, to their natures. They were not like swimmers fighting the current to ascend upstream. This is the point. But like individuals smoothly floating on the still waters at the source. So he says that this is best expressed in the Sefer Yetzirah, which is called the Book of Creation. It is the earliest of all of the books. We've seen this before. One of the most ancient and mysterious Kabbalah texts. It states in the Sefer Yetzirah, an instant seeing them like a lightning flash. Because in our world, time is critically important. But in the world beyond of creation, it's not the same at all. So we want to know how long we can reattach ourselves. So it's just like a lightning flash. One who reached this level may not remain there for more than an instant. That's what it is. It's instantaneous. You have some ray of consciousness that comes into you. That's the malach. That's the angel. But he doesn't stay. He must run forward and immediate return. He has to go away. He has to come back again. That's a very interesting idea here. Because we say as things are built, as consciousness is built, it's not done at one time. As a matter of fact, it can't be done at one time. It has to be continually returned, casting the barest glimpse at the highest infinite levels. The higher you get in this. I know Rabbi Mimran tried to teach me this. A later mystic, the Hasidic master, Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, which says really love the work of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, speaks of this with regards to the infinite being, the Ein Sof, the endless one. He writes it as a light that is so high that one can only reach it by touching and not touching. That's called mati velo mati in the Rav. Fluttering back and forth so as not to perish within. It's like getting close to the light in our world of the sun. We need the sun. We want the sun. We want its light. We want its heat. But we can't touch it. Not really. But we can perceive something else much higher than that in our minds. The prophets would meditate, be misguided, on the highest mysteries of the Sefirot, as well as the supernal soul, which includes all attributes, and try to connect to that. They would depict these things in their mind with their imaginative faculty, which we can do as well, visualizing them as if they were actually in front of them. When their souls became attached to the supernal soul. So this is their effort of kind of trying to get closer and closer. When they can make that attachment, which we said previously is an instant. Because remember that an instant to eternity is no such thing. So eternity is eternal beyond time. But for us, we are physical. This vision would be increased and intensified as you get closer, would then be revealed automatically through a state where thought is utterly absent. Now, this is a big theme of Rabbi Mimran. He says that our thoughts, our normal thoughts, are bodily thoughts. And it's very difficult to get to a state where they're totally not there because we are living and breathing. But I noticed when I tried this interesting note, I don't know if Rabbi Mimran ever listens to any of these shiurim, as I try this at different times, it helps me fall asleep to try to blank my mind. It's let's go on. It got off on that. So it was in this manner that the early saints would raise their thoughts, reaching the place from which their souls emanated. And this is where we go. This was also the method of attaining prophecy. The prophet would meditate, and the word which is used a lot by Rabbi Nachman, but it is because it's been publicized tremendously by him, is his boded, directing his heart and attaching his mind on high. What the prophet would visualize would depend on the degree of means of his attachment. In other words, how much can he blank his mind? He would then gaze and know what would happen in the future. This is the meaning of the verse, to him you shall cleave. This goes right to the very beginning of Rabbi Nachman here. And he's quoting Rabbi Nachman Rekanti, Parshas Vayechi, who was a great Kabbalist. They had a whole system. Sefer Minchat Yehuda, Ma'arechet Elokut, all of these master Kabbalists. He was a master. This is significant because what these people are doing is they have the time, they have the ability to be able to practice this a lot. This is significant since beauty, which is also known in Hebrew as Teves, is one of the 10 Sefiros. These 10 Sefiros, which are discussed in Kabbalah, the 10 Sefiros are Keter, learning ability, he calls it, Chochmah, understanding. Let me see if I got this right. No, I said it wrong. The 10 Sefiros are will, which is Keser. So that's will. Learning ability is Chochmah. How much can you say to yourself that this is really important? That's your Chochmah, your ability to reach something. People have different IQs, different ways of learning, lots of different ways of learning. Everybody's different. Understanding is Bina. Kindness is Chesed. Strength is Gevurah. Beauty is Teferes. Dominance is Netzach. Submissiveness is called Hod. Reproductive faculty is Yesod. And then the ultimate concept here is the concept of receptivity, which is Malchus. At the end, everything has to be received, and that's what we want. We want the reception of the brachos. Through these spheros, they may be looked upon as dials. What does dials mean? That can be used to amplify the experience associated with them. Now that's a very interesting idea. He says the spheros can be looked at as dials, like dial a telephone number, or amplify the sound. That's what he's saying. The dial that used makes a sound go up. So he said to amplify the experiences associated with them. So the Sefirot themselves, now I don't know how that would work, but let's go on. Thus, since beauty is one of the 10 Sefiros, one can turn up the dial. Oh, it says on something, when you see something beautiful, you can find consciousness through something beautiful and amplify the sensation. Let's see if I can get down lower and read this little blurb at the very end. This is the end of this series, this chapter. He says, these Sefiros may be looked upon as dials that we can use to amplify the experiences. And when he said that beauty is one of the dials, but also, look like what he said. He says there's also will. You could dial up your will. You could make it your Keser, that this is what you want to do. You want to attach yourself to the Almighty Baruch Hu. Hashem. So he says that amplified the experiences. So you could do that with chesed, just getting into what chesed means. You could get into gevurah, which means power. And Teferis, we mentioned Teferis. Netzach is you get a hold and you keep going. And Hod, ultimately manifestation, and going on to all of them. All that can be used as meditations. That's very interesting. Something that we can do. This is Baruch Fleischman. These are fantastic words of the holy Rabbi Yosef Chaim Mimran.